Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. We kick off the conversations this morning in the eastern part of the continent, where authorities in Kenya have detained Brian Mwenda, a fake lawyer who is said to have won, allegedly, 26 cases while posing as an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Now, before his arrest, Mwenda handled 26 cases before High Court judges, magistrates, and Court of Appeal judges, all of which he won as alleged.
The Law Society of Kenya Nairobi Branch Rapid Action Team RAT detained him when they received complaints from the general public. They have said that he does not have a license to practice law in Kenya and was impersonating a lawyer with a similar name by taking over his profile on the LSK portal. Many are wondering how he pulled off the act and why it took this long to get him arrested. Let's now bring in Faith Odhiambo. She's the Vice President, Law Society of Kenya. Thank you very much, Faith, for joining us.
Morning.
Good morning. All right, I want to ask how the Law Society first and the legal profession in Kenya is taking this news, something that seems to have, it has made a national headline. Some have jokingly called him the Mike Ross of Kenya. How is the legal profession in Kenya taking this and the legal body taking this?
First of all, let me just correct a few misunderstandings and misrepresentations that have been going on air. First of all, Brian Mwenda, or the alleged Brian N. Mwenda, did not win 26 cases, unless in terms of winning, he means getting adjournments or getting deeds. The law, the system that we have, even the criminal justice system, getting a case done, some that even have been expedited through efforts of the Law Society or other bodies, have taken about 5 years. Brian Mwenda's story started when he took on or tried to steal the identity of one Brian Mwenda Ntigwa, who is the real advocate, who was admitted on the 5th of August, 2022. So even if you say that he has been impersonating for over a year, there's no plausibility that he would have even won 26 cases. And further, he was caught because of the shoddy pleadings that he filed, and the lawyer that picked the same sought for clarification if this is a lawyer, because ideally it was implausible that a lawyer could draft such pleadings. And so that's how he ended up being caught, because the pleadings were so bad that there was clearly a clear assertion that even a law student couldn't have drafted such pleadings. And so there's no plausibility that you could have won 26 cases. Now, we have since reported the same to the DCI in Kenya. He's currently a fugitive, and we have raised alarm on the same. He must either present himself, or the DCI will get him and he'll be arrested. And we are recording statements on the same. We want to bring him to book because he has duped members of the public who have given money to him in the presumption that he's an advocate, that he can present them in court. And so the Law Society will be grappling with a lot of complaints of cases that have been filed and now they bear no legal basis in court, because these have been filed by a non-lawyer, non-qualified person who presented themselves out as an advocate. In actual sense, they were not an advocate. So the challenge is also dealing with the proceedings that he has since filed in court, and we have asked members of the public to come forward and indicate the cases that he has represented so that we can see how to deal with the rising quagmires that they'll find themselves in, and see the extent that we can assist, and also use that as part and parcel of the evidence that we'll be collecting for the cases of fraud that have been raised against him. So this was a clear case of stolen identity, because he was going by the name of Brian N. Mwenda, while the real Brian is Brian Ntigwa Mwenda. So he was trying to use the similar names to pass off as the real Brian, because the real Brian was working at the Office of the Attorney General, and he had not since taken out his practicing certificate. And we are aware that there is information that he presented practicing certificates, which will be working closely with the Director of Public Prosecution to ensure that after those documents have been reviewed, we'll be able to establish the veracity of the same. And from our records, we did not issue with any practicing certificate. So those are also further cases of fraud that we'll be hoping to deal with as and when they arise.
Okay, well, is there any other information you have about who exactly he is? Has he, maybe had a criminal file, before of impersonation? Or did he just emerge 1 year ago out of the blues? I mean, is there any information as to what his real name is, this person we're speaking of?
Now, so far, someone has come out to say that they are his father and that he attended a law school. Yet there was another group from Chuka University that came to say he did criminology in Chuka. And so we are hoping to put the pieces together to find out who this person is. What astounds us is that there are certain personalities that have come out, and we have also raised alarm that the former governor of Nairobi, Mike Sonko, who came out to say that he's protecting him and he's going to be with him until they're ready to present him before the DCI, and which raises questions and alarm that why all of a sudden have these personalities, and also the head of court, Mr. Toli, are coming out to defend him, situations that we have never seen before. The Law Society has dealt with situations of quacks and masqueraders before. Just last year, we've had very many operations arresting, and also the Nairobi branch, the rapid action team have had the opportunity of arresting quite a number. We have never seen any political personalities coming out to defend an individual. We have not had a situation where the head of court has come out to defend an individual. So it also raises questions and concern and alarm. Who actually is this Brian? Why are these personalities coming to defend him? What is his connections to these personalities? Is there a reason or is there a nexus? And that's why we are brought in the director of criminal investigations and asked him to expedite this process. As the Law Society, this is a great affront, because at least for lawyers, when we have situations of lawyers who swindle clients or carry out actions that are against the law, we have the Advocates Disciplinary Committee, an Advocates Complaints Commission, that members of the public can complain to them, and we have recourse according to our laws in the Law Society of Kenya, our regulations that guide how an advocate should conduct himself when representing a client. But this is a situation of one rogue individual, a conman, a quack, out there that is swindling members of the public, and there's no recourse that the Law Society can give you directly because it's not an advocate. And we want to ensure that this will be a strong warning to any other quacks or masqueraders that think that they can pass off as advocate or steal anyone's identity, to ensure that this can never happen again.
So you did say a few minutes ago that there had been a number of cases where the Law Society had to fish out some quack lawyers in the past year. Is there something that makes it easy for these persons to impersonate lawyers?
Now, I don't know if it's because the legal profession is deemed as quite an attractive profession, but we've had situations, particularly where there are not so many advocates in a particular station. Then we have, because of the need of the members of the public, we find a lot of offices being set up and they're feigning or pretending that they're advocates or they're secretaries of advocates. And when you do investigation, we find that there's no face of an advocate behind it. So we have been carrying out crackdowns from town to town just to ensure that any office opened that indicates that it's run by an advocate, there's actually an advocate, and we confirm the same even with our database of lawyers. We've seen situations, crackdowns we have had in Nanyuki, we have had it in Meru, in Alori, Nairobi, and various other towns. And we are calling out also on the members of the public. The Law Society has the Law Society search engine that you'll be able to type in the name of an advocate and be able to establish whether this is actually an advocate who has been admitted and can practice. And you'll be able to know who you're dealing with. And we keep reminding members of the public that is the only way to be able to protect yourself, that you don't find yourself in the quagmire that some of these clients or alleged clients that this quack, Brian N. Mwenda, had or purported to represent in court. So we are being more vigilant, and we are pushing that more advocates, every advocate in every single town should be connected to their branch, so that we know who is there, who are our advocates in the various towns, so that we can ensure that there's no room, and we are more vigilant that we don't have quacks in feigning to be members of the Law Society of Kenya.
All right. I hope that there's a better process of verifying every single person that represents cases in court. But I also want to ask about what happens to these cases that, for example, the fake Brian Mwenda represented, or was it practiced in court? What happens to those cases? Will those cases be brought back for another review? Will some persons who maybe were able to get judgment in their favor under his representation maybe also be called back for another trial? What's the likely situation that's going to play out?
Depending on the cases that he has since dealt with, for example, criminal cases, it means that any witnesses he may have cross-examined will have to be brought back because the record that he did or actioned in court will be struck out. So any witnesses that he may have cross-examined or re-examined would have to be brought back for that record to reflect the true position, because he was not an advocate and he did not have any powers to act as one. And for the civil cases, it may be a bit more sad, because the other advocates on record will seek for the court to strike out those proceedings. So depending on which matters that are there in court, then we'll be able to see the necessary way forward. But that's the now greater quagmire, and that's why the Law Society is strict with regards to our advocates taking out practicing certificates to ensure that not only are they qualified to practice, but also they have gone through the necessary rigors, because that's the only way we can ensure we are protecting members of the public. So such a situation brings a quagmire, and I hope this Brian Mwenda case will be a case that will live long in the hearts of many, to remember the importance of also verifying once you pick an advocate that they are truly advocates of the Law Society. We have had situations where even members of the public write to the Law Society for confirmation as to whether an advocate is practicing. Some also use our database quite a bit because it's free. You just go into the LSK search engine and type in the name and you'll be able to establish the same. Not only that he's an advocate, but he's qualified to practice in that particular year.
That's
and
a very,
so
okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So that's the challenge. It will be depending on the cases that he's filed, but the reality is it puts the members of the public or his purported clients at a loss, because somehow if they had paid him for monies, meaning they have lost their monies, and they'll have to probably start certain cases afresh.
All right, let's talk about what happens now to this fake Brian Mwenda, whose name we're not yet aware of. If and maybe when he either submits himself for investigation or is arrested by the DIC, what next?
So when in talks with the DCI, and we hope he can be arrested today. And what next lies for him is that he will probably take his statement and will go through the necessary rigors that the law enforcement will require. But the reality is the Law Society, as a complainant, will be raising various cases of fraud that have been committed by himself. We are working with all parties, and we have asked also members of the public to bring or raise concern in any cases they may have handled with him. So those are part and parcel of the evidence. The reality is, in our jurisdiction, if you act as a quack or a masquerader, the chances, particularly because the Law Society is a complainant, you will never be able to practice law in this jurisdiction. So irrespective of whether he goes to school or not, the fact that he feigned and to act as a lawyer and has caused not only damage to the legal profession in terms of the repute of the legal profession, the Law Society will not be giving its go-ahead in terms of him being able to practice in this jurisdiction.
All right, now
apart from any criminal decisions, we hope will be as a complainant pushing and watching brief once a case has been lodged against him. The Law Society will be vigilant and following to ensure that he's prosecuted accordingly for the crimes that he has since committed.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing all this very important information. I think also one thing we must highlight is that the members of the public who need to engage the services of advocates must visit the Law Society's portal and search for their names. I don't know if you can share with us a website or how exactly they can go about this to ensure that they can verify the authenticity of the advocate that they're hiring.
Yeah, so it's very simple. They can use, just go type in Law Society website or check search engine, and you'll be able to open the website, and when you look for search advocate, you'll be able to indicate the section, and you'll be able to see, once you type in the full names of the advocate, it'll bring out a pop-up showing the advocate, his P105 number, and whether he's active or not. His status is active, and you'll be able to see if he's active, particularly for the given year, to show that he's qualified and he's taken out a practicing certificate for that particular year.
All right. I also want to speak about the Law Society of Kenya. Elections are coming up, so I hear. You're running for office. What would you say should change or must change, and why do you maybe deserve to win in your elections?
So yes, the Law Society elections are coming, and I will be vying to be president of the Law Society. The things that the Law Society has grown exponentially, and things that we need to see is much more progress to this bar. As much as we want to maintain a stable Law Society to be able to be progressive, we need to have a building of the Law Society of Kenya. We need to see greater progress in terms of the practice areas that are evolving over time. There's so much to embrace in terms of Kenya being one of the fintech hubs and being seen as one of the strategic partnership areas, particularly for the growing online apps. We have M-Pesa, but there's so many other different areas of the law that are since growing. Financial services that we need to see most of our lawyers embracing now. Welfare for our advocates, to feel that the Law Society is taking not only care of their professional needs, but also their welfare and personal needs as a law society. So there's so much opportunities that are out there that the Law Society needs to embrace, also working with the international communities. Just last year, we've had some good engagement, not only with also the Nigerian bar, the English and England and Wales bar that is also visiting Kenya this week. But we have also had good relations with the American bar. And so the Law Society, we're looking at how can we move outside and embrace our advocates to be more competitive, not only locally, but internationally. Because we have been having good relations and building networks in terms of how can we push to the next level. So for me, I see the Law Society has only the pivoting point to launch for greatness and for better things. And we will also look inward in terms of how can we crack down to ensure that as a law society, such questions as dealing with quacks as we move to grow the Law Society does not happen. We want to not only maintain
would it be fair, because now you're mentioning dealing with cracks, would it be, or quacks, I beg your pardon, would it be fair for anyone who says, well, I mean, the reports of quack lawyers and impersonations in the court happened under your watch as vice president?
Well, we have had the situations of quacks not only during my watch as the vice president, but over the years. The reality is that we are having more brazen situations of persons who are hiding in plain sight. Indeed, we have not had a situation of Brian Mwenda that has been hiding in plain sight, because he was attending events and appearing with all of us. There was that great assumption because of the question of the respect that we carry amongst each other and the element of trust within colleagues in the law society, which has brought also that introspection that we need to be more rigorous in terms of our security measures and to also be at the wake of cybersecurity attacks. Just this year, our country has faced several cybersecurity attacks, but also it raises a question as to how more rigorous can we ensure that the procedures that we adopt at the law society, because this is a learning lesson, and me being at the helm at this particular time that has happened at my watch, I will ensure that this is a scenario that does not happen again, because we have identified how we can improve the system. Being me sitting at this position of leadership, we have been able to see how can we make things more better, more rigorous, more strict to ensure that such a scenario does not ever happen again. And we'll be working closely with the branches to ensure that we are able to identify our members who are practicing various practice centers to ensure that we are able to weed out any quacks, whether hiding or open in plain sight. We'll be able to work as a team, because this is not an individual fight as faith, but it's a collective fight. Because when you bring disrepute to the law society, you've brought disrepute to over the 23,000 members of the law society. So this is going to be a collective fight that we will work with all the members.
I'd like to piggyback off the question my colleague asked and still follow up with the elections going on, the Law Society of Kenya elections coming up shortly. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, so far we've had just one female president, Ambassador Rachel Omamo, I believe, if I'm correct. Yes, Ambassador Rachel Omamo, and you are vying to be president. How important is it that we start to have conversations, or is it ripe for us to have conversations about seeing more women at the helm of affairs? Maybe it would be nice for you to give us a picture about female leadership. And this is, of course, as we talk about breaching gender disparity in several professions, including the legal profession. What's the situation like, and is this an important conversation to have?
And indeed, I agree with you. It's an important discussion to have. The last president we had who was female was Rachel Omamo. And since then, I think there's been sort of a glass ceiling of what others have said, the curse of the vice president. Some of the very prominent female vice presidents, we have not seen them rising to president. We've had Harriet Chigai, who's now a CS in government in Kenya. We've had Caroline Kamende, who's also vying, but she tried before and she didn't make it. So there's also that question of, is it the curse of being the vice president, and myself now is vying. But I say this, it's a greater talk in terms of we need to see more women rising to the top, because not only are we capable, but also we have what it takes in terms of leadership skills. I believe that this will be a turning point, and particularly in this election. So we have more women who are vying for president than has been seen in quite a while. However, I stand out because the platform is here to sell myself. I stand out because I have not only served as a council member and secretary of the Board of Federation of Women Lawyers, having a track record of cumulative 10 years of leadership. So not only have I served in that capacity, but I've served as a council member and now the vice president. Not only do I have the institutional memory, but I have what it takes in terms of leadership to be able to bring us to the next level. The Law Society is a great society, and we also have quite a number of female lawyers, but also male lawyers who support female leadership. And so this year, I'm confident that we will see, hopefully, the second female president of the Law Society, and I hope to be that female president of the Law Society.
Faith Odhiambo, we certainly wish you the best in the forthcoming elections, and we certainly look forward. I, as a woman, of course, will be excited to see another woman becoming the first or the second president of the Law Society of Kenya. Thank you very much for your time with us this morning.
Thank you.